Howdy, and welcome to the show. We thought we'd do something fun for this particular show. The day that this is dropping is May 4th, and for those of you who are in the know, there is a bit of a tradition in terms of May the 4th be with you. A while back, I wrote on the topic of the way of the Jedi Lawyer, and so we thought that we would go down that path today. For way of background, I grew up as a Star Wars kid, probably no surprise to some of you who've listened to the show in terms of an occasional bit of nerdiness. I had the Kenner dolls and various things in terms of playing with it, but the piece that most appealed to me in terms of the Jedi mindset was the aspect of the Force, the idea that it was some form of almost spirit, and it was probably the closest I had in terms of coming to religion at that time in my life. The idea that there is a force that binds us and surrounds us, and an energy field in terms of how we engage. I continue to believe that is a way that I have embraced the trial life in terms of trying cases. There is definitely an energy when you're dealing with clients, dealing with opposing counsel, dealing with the energy within a courtroom and with jurors. And if you can truly tap into that energy in terms of absorbing it, feeling it around you, it's the kind of thing that can really impact one's ability to succeed and be fully aware of one's surroundings. So a story that I share related to this, we were trying a case in Roseville years ago, and we did our closing argument, and I used a bit that I really enjoyed. All great ideas tend to be plagiarized from others. I talked about how the defense had created, in essence, a petri dish for negligence. And it was a piece that I had borrowed liberally from Bill Veen, my mentor. The topic, I was unaware at the time that I was presenting it, so offended the defense lawyer that he lost his focus. When he got up and he did his closing, he was visibly angry, went completely off script, and spent the first 20 minutes raging about how inappropriate it was to compare his client's corporation to a petri dish in terms of where bacteria gets cultured. We were able to talk to the jurors after that was done, and they found his closing to be disorienting, his anger to be misplaced, and that it really did not help his client very much in terms of that. So why do I bring that up when I'm talking about the way of the Jedi Lawyer? There is this almost Zen mindset that can be very helpful when we are approaching our cases. So for those of you who don't know all the background on Star Wars and some of the thoughts related to it, the idea of Star Wars and the Force and some of the other pieces were liberally borrowed from Joseph Campbell, the hero with 1,000 faces. And those also were based in large part on Jungian archetypes. So there are three principles that show up when you are embracing the Jedi Lawyer lifestyle. That's embracing change, it's fighting smarter, and it's knowing your fear and not having fear. Fear is something that is going to exist no matter what, but it is facing your fear, embracing it, and going forward despite the fear that you have. I'll use an example. These solo episodes for me sometimes are quite frightening. When I have guests on, I am able to shine a light on guests and help them provide wisdom and knowledge to our listeners. When it's just myself, I oftentimes have a bit of an imposter syndrome mindset, and I worry about whether my content's going to be well received. So right now, I'm one of the ways I'm embracing my fears is sharing my fear with you as we go down this path. When we talk about embracing and using change, nothing in life goes as expected. If you seek to control, you will find yourself doomed to misery because controlling things is exceedingly hard and rarely satisfying. So an example that I find really compelling in terms of embracing and using change. Years ago, we were in another trial, and our client had suffered a partial foot amputation. And that what that meant is it was very difficult for him to toe off when you're walking. As you step forward, your foot goes down, and you use your toe to propel yourself forward. He was missing the first half of his foot, and so his forward propulsion was really quite hard. It was hard on to move quickly and hard on stairs. So in the middle of his direct examination, the fire alarm went off at the courthouse, and this was down in Norwalk, out district in Los Angeles. We were on the fourth floor, and everyone was excused from the courtroom. All the jurors went out the courtroom door, all the lawyers, all the staff, our client, all at the same time. And the jurors watched as our client struggled to get down the stairs and struggled to get out the front door, and was one of the last people out of the building. Now, it was a drill. It was not a real emergency. And so while there was no risk in the moment, the jurors saw what happened with our client in terms of his mobility. And that actually became a pivot in the case. That became an opportunity and became something that we talked about in closing argument, and talked about how the jurors could see the stress on this individual who had always been very self-sufficient, self-reliant. He had been a truck driver, sole supporter for his family, how this was a huge issue for him in terms of his life safety and mobility. And the jurors saw that and appreciated it. And that's an example of taking something that happens and embracing it instead of getting concerned about what happens in the case. Also listed, fighting smarter and not harder. That is a common theme on the contingent fee side. And what I mean by that, we contingent fee lawyers oftentimes are faced with numerous lawyers on the other side. So a corporation can go out and hire as many lawyers as it feels is necessary and can throw as much force as it would like at us. So if one tries to outwork the other side, you can find yourself sometimes in trouble. So that's an area where fighting smarter and not harder is a way to think about embracing the case. An example, when one has a 40-page meet-and-confer letter. So the other side has decided that it's going to spend a lot of time and money going through line by line with discovery responses. These are areas, by the way, where the defense team can really get in and try to take us off of our path. So that's an opportunity to figure out a different solution to the 40-page meet-and-confer. So refuting it line by line turns into this Hydra-like problem where a 40-page meet-and-confer becomes a 60-page response, becomes a 120-page back and forth. So there are other ways to deal with this type of issue. We find using the phone sometimes works. Finding a way to cut through that, Gordian knot, a one-paragraph response of you're seeking to just find problems with everything. We've provided you with all the information that we have related to this. And if you continue to believe that there's a deficiency in our responses, then we invite you to engage with the court. There are simpler ways forward with almost every fight that gets brought to you. On knowing your fear and facing your fear, I always use the example of the fear related to solo episodes. There's another area where I have found that acknowledging my fears has been very powerful. One of the things that always gave me the most consternation and most concern in trial was jury selection. And that was in part because one has been going along, doing motions in limine, getting to know the judge, working through issues. And then at a certain point, that 75 to 150 person panel comes in, and the judge completes the judicial voir dire, and then it's time for someone, plaintiff's lawyer, to get up and start asking questions. And that is a very cold room from the idea of say working in stage or working comedy. No one wants to talk. And so getting up and and starting that conversation when you've got a bunch of people who are suspicious, who are familiar with billboard lawyers, think that we are ambulance chasers and that we have start on the back foot. That fear of engaging that dialogue is something that to this day, that is the moment when my hands start to sweat a little bit. The way that I have addressed that is by embracing it. It's by getting up and saying to the panel, "Hi, I'm Miles Cooper. I represent Joe Smith, and we're going to be asking you some very detailed questions, and we're doing that because we want to make sure that we have the right jurors for this case. And because of that, we're going to be asking you questions that might ask you to expose things about yourself that might be a little bit less comfortable. And if it's too uncomfortable, we ask you to let us know, and we'll talk to the judge and see if we can take that up in private. But on the more global things like, hey, how you doing? Talk about yourself in front of a bunch of strangers. It's a big ask. So I'm going to let you know that as we go into this is the most challenging part for me in trial. When I get up here, I have a lot of fear because getting up and talking in front of a bunch of strangers is concerning to me. So I'm letting you know my fears because I wouldn't ask you to expose anything without exposing a little bit myself too. So with that in mind, and then I go into talking to some of the jurors. There are different ways that people approach things that I've found has worked for me. That actually was something that came up through a Jerry Spence program. And it's in essence taking the thing that is most concerning for you or the thing that is the biggest weakness for you and turning it into a strength in terms of being open and vulnerable and transparent when working with a jury. As you go forward, as we go forward, this idea of a Zen mindset, this idea of being calm, cool, collected, embracing change, it is a practice. It is not perfection. I have talked with various folks about the idea of this perfectly balanced Zen monk or Jedi warrior who never loses their cool, who's always able to face whatever is thrown at them. And the reality is that working on this for ourselves, this Jedi lawyer practice, it's an asymptotic curve. Or if you use it, a surfing analogy, you might catch that perfect wave, and then there will be the next wave, and that might not be perfect. In the rowing world where I came from, you were always seeking to have that perfect stroke. The idea of the perfect stroke was, dropping your blade in just the right angle, at just the right time, providing just the right force on it. And you were lucky if in the course of your career, you got a few perfect strokes. And even if you reach the point where you're getting perfect stroke after perfect stroke, each time you got a new stroke, there was the opportunity for perfection in that new approach. So when I say this Zen practice is a practice and not perfection, there will be things that will throw you off your game every day, most likely. You will walk out and think that your day is going to be just fine and find that there is a parking ticket on your car. And suddenly you're upset about something that you have no control over in terms of the parking ticket. The thing that you do have control over is your response. So you want to make sure that as you're approaching life, you just embrace everything and acknowledge that you are not perfect along the way. That, for me, is the macro overview of the way of the Jedi Lawyer. I hope you enjoyed this little snack bite-sized podcast for May 4th, and may the 4th be with you. To all of you listening out there, thanks for listening. Please email us at podcast@coopers.law with questions, comments, feedback, and suggestions for who we should have on the show. Like what you heard? Share us with a colleague and leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. To all of you doing justice out there, happy hunting.